Have you ever heard of the greatest integer function? F of x equals the greatest integer less than or equal to x. The greatest integer function takes as input a real number x and gives as output the greatest integer less than or equal to x. Denoted with the square bracket or double brackets. So no matter what real number value for x you plug in, the function gives you the greatest integer less than or equal to x as its output. What does this mean exactly? It means that when we plug in an integer, the output is exactly that integer which we plug in. So when we plug in, for example, a -3, we get a -3 as an output. When we plug in a -2, we get a -2. When we plug in a -1, we get a -1. When we plug in a 0, we get a 0. When we plug in a 1, we get a 1. But when we plug in, for example, a -1.5, we get -2 as an output. When we plug in -0.5, we get -1. When we plug in 2.9, we get 2, and so on. So for each number we plug in, which is not an integer, the greatest integer function rounds the number down to the next integer. Again, for example, all numbers which are less than 2 and greater than or equal to 1 as an input gives us the output 1. Or for example, all numbers which are less than 3 and greater than or equal to 2 gives us the output 2. So if we could plug in all real numbers, we would get this graph, which goes on forever in both directions. Recall that the closed circle indicates that the number is included, and the open circle indicates that the number is not included. Now you see why we also call the greatest integer function the step function. We also call this function the floor function. By the way, when the inputs would have been rounded up to the next integer instead of rounded down to the next integer, then the function is called the ceiling function. If you like my videos, like, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching and happy learning, everyone.